Are you ready to do a deep dive into another statement of purpose so that we can find out together how we can maximize its quality? Stick around and let's do this thing today on this episode of Navigating Academia. What's up, Navigating Academia community? This is Dr. J. Phoenix Singh coming at you with another episode of Navigating Academia, your leading source for guidance on how you can advance your career in academia. Today I've got a real special episode for you that I'm really hoping that you're going to enjoy. Today we're going to be doing a deep dive into a statement of purpose, i.e. a personal statement that one of you have sent me. I really appreciate you having done that. This is part of a limited series that I'm doing where I'm going through real CVs and real statements of purpose that y'all have sent me to be able to do two things. Number one is to be able to polish them up and give constructive criticism, to be able to hopefully maximize the likelihood that you're going to be successful in whatever endeavor you're using these documents for, but also I want to use it as a teaching mechanism. So I'm trying to be as instructional as possible when I go through these things to be able to give you guys a real world sense of what individuals like myself who oftentimes are reviewing these sorts of materials, what we're looking for, okay? So that's what we're going to be doing today. Before we get started, please do smash that like button, comment below if you like these types of videos because it helps the algorithm, and if you really enjoy our content, please do consider becoming one of our Patreon supporters. You can do that via the link below. It's only a few dollars a month and you get access to exclusive content. You also get a one-on-one shout out from me in a video, and also you get significant access to me, particularly when it comes to choosing the topics of future live streams, getting recordings of all prior live streams, and you also get discounts if you ever want to book a one-on-one session with me. Speaking of those types of sessions, like I said, this is a limited series. If you want to do a deep dive with me concerning your personal statement or statement of purpose, please don't hesitate to get in touch with me via the website below to be able to book a session so that we can work together one-on-one. It would be a pleasure. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get this thing going for today's statement of purpose. All right, so this statement of purpose was sent to us by Victor, and if you guys go ahead and take a look at the CV videos which are accompanying this series, where I'm taking a look at personal statements, i.e. statements of purpose, you will notice some similarities with one of the CVs because it is also Victor. So thank you so much to Victor for sending both of these two documents along. I greatly appreciate it. If you watch that video, you may remember that Victor is from Nigeria. This is the prompt for his statement of purpose that he was kind enough to send along. As you can see here, if I kind of take this away, if I click anywhere over to the side, you'll notice how it kind of jumbles up like that. And so because of that, I'll just go ahead and put it here now. I'll read it to you and then we'll get going, okay? So here's the prompt. Describe your prior research and or teaching experiences that evoked an interest in research or long-term career goals and rationale for applying to the Cell Systems and Anatomy graduate program. Now, if you watch other videos in this personal statement, i.e. statement of purpose series, you'll know that I'm a deep believer in using a paragraph structure which begins with an introductory narrative which ends up basically saying why it is that you got interested in a field in general. So this is piece number one. After that, talking about your academic experience. After that, talking about, depending on the nature of the program, your practical experience or your research experience. And then after that, talking about the goodness of fit with the target program, and particularly if it's a research-based program, talking about who the target supervisor is and why it is that with that particular individual, you have a high level of goodness of fit. And then we're going to close it up with a nice tight paragraph, essentially thanking the individuals who are going to be reading the piece for their consideration and valued time. Now, if it's ever something where you would like me to go through that with you in terms of your own personal statement, all you have to do is book a session with me, and we discussed earlier in the video how you can do that. But what you'll notice is that even though statements of purpose, i.e. personal statements, their prompts for different graduate programs will differ, all of them are essentially going to be giving or requesting information from you that several paragraph structure that I just gave you is going to cover. So this is describe your prior research or teaching experiences, so it would cover those that evoked an interest in your research or in research. Your long-term career goals, so this can easily be taken care of in the structure that I mentioned, and rationale for applying to this particular graduate program. Okay, so let's go ahead and get reading here. The first thing I'm going to do is to go ahead and zoom out. Let's take a look at the personal statement just in terms of the general length of the paragraphs, how everything is set up in general. Okay, so let's go ahead. Let's start going through. And so it looks like the paragraphs, at least so far, all seem to be, yeah, there's nothing that's like a 1 or 2 sentence paragraph or anything like that. It looks like the minimum is about 4 to 5 paragraphs, which is, completely standard here, which is great. And it seems like there's some good information in here. The first things as I'm just going through is I'm seeing things like the names of statistical softwares and these sorts of things, which is never a bad thing, particularly because this seems like it's a research program that Victor is interested in applying to, okay? So let's go ahead and get reading here. We'll start with paragraph 1. Remember that in the first paragraph, what I'm looking for is, first of all, something's got to hook me right at the very beginning to be able to make me continue to read. This is literally the only part of a grad school or postdoctoral fellow or a, less so a tenure track position cover letter, but certainly a graduate school application letter, that's for sure. In terms of personal statement, that is similar to an undergraduate statement of purpose. You got to hook me at the very beginning. You guys should be aware of just how many hundreds of these things we usually have to read. And so because of that, if, we're using, like, for example, this is cell systems and anatomy, right? So if the first, sentence is something like, my undergraduate studies at the University of Boston made me deeply passionate about exploring a graduate program in cell systems and anatomy, that's not good, right? Why? It is so overly generic, right? And remember that we always want to avoid any kind of emotional language. Emotional language is not language that necessarily talks in a specifically emotional way, but it's basically language that is highly subjective. For example, such and such is a very important program, let's say. Okay, well, there's no need for the word very, it's just an important program, right? So usually adjectives, adverbs, and sometimes verbs even themselves can be too strong, and it really does take somebody who's been doing this for a while to be able to identify those things. Now, obviously, sometimes these things are going to differ by culture, but the thing is regardless of where you happen to be it in Australia or South America or in Africa or North America, you're still going to be competing against other individuals to be able to get into the same peer-reviewed journals, to be able to get book contracts with leading academic publishers in your field and so forth. And because of that, there is, to that extent, a universal writing style that should be taken into consideration. Okay? So without further ado, now that you know what I'm looking for in the first paragraph, open with a hook. After that, extrapolate on the hook to be able to kind of flesh it out. And by the end of it, I want to know how it is that particular narrative experience you've just given me resulted in a deep passion for whatever the field is that you happen to be interested in. Okay, so let's go ahead and read. Now, Victor is from Nigeria. I love Nigeria. I have 2 very dear Nigerian colleagues at Arrow Hospital who I just co-edited a book with, and they're fantastic. Love the people of Africa, massive continent, so much richness in terms of cultures there. And one thing that I have a hard time with is pronunciation sometimes. So I hope that Victor and everybody else, all my friends from Africa, will excuse my skipping over certain words if I cannot pronounce them in terms of location. Okay, so growing up in this location, in Lagos State, Nigeria, I lived, okay, so the sentence structure doesn't make sense in terms of growing up in such and such, I lived, right? So those things don't particularly go together, right? Born in comma, I lived with, I lived with my grandparents, who suffered from, I'm not sure grandparents is capitalized, who suffered from, and we always want to avoid the term suffered, right? This is something that Individuals within certain communities view this as labeling language, particularly the term, suffered. It's like saying somebody is suffering from Down syndrome, suffering from autism, suffering from mental retardation. It suggests that there is a suffering component. And of course, individuals in these vulnerable population categories do sometimes experience subjective suffering, but this is just a term we want to avoid, okay? Who suffered from Alzheimer's disease and dementia, respectively. The problem is that you say respectively, but you don't say, like, I lived with my grandmother and grandfather who suffered from Alzheimer's disease and dementia respectively, right? Meaning that Alzheimer's disease would have be relevant to the first individual, dementia to the second individual, okay? Next, I had a first-hand experience of the, okay, so that's an incorrect way of saying this. I think that what you're trying to say is, like basically you had a front row seat, even though I don't say that, but that's what you mean, not a first-hand experience of the emotional effects. And then you say it, but the thing is that what is it referring to, right? Alzheimer's disease, dementia, these are clearly two different conditions, right? So it doesn't really mean anything here. It had on my family. My grandmother sometimes, and then lowercase grandmother, but uppercase grandparents here is not consistent, so either do one or the other. My grandmother sometimes could not recognize her grandchildren, and my grandfather was often silent and incapable of social interactions. Okay. I was particularly upset when I found out that there wasn't, okay, never use a contraction in a personal statement or in a CV. So we don't want anything like this, right? So no, wasn't, isn't, and so forth, okay? A known cure for these diseases. Okay, I was particularly upset when I found out that there wasn't a known cure for these diseases and slowly watched the condition of my grandparents deteriorate. Okay, again, grandparents here lowercase, so now we definitely need to change capitalization somewhere. My grandparents deteriorate. Okay, so this is a run-on sentence. I was particularly upset when I found out that there wasn't a cure for these diseases and slowly watched the condition of my parents deteriorate. And shortly after what? Right, there's no individual incident here where the preposition after would be appropriate, okay? Shortly after, and I don't understand what's going on with the multiple spaces here, okay? Make sure everybody double check, no double spacing in terms of space, okay? My grandfather suffered from a stroke, just say experienced a stroke, and passed away. And again, this is another run-on. And my grandmother years after. Okay, this sentence just needs grammatical work. Okay. Learning about these neurodegenerative diseases, and it's just, okay, no, because this is plural, and now you're saying it's, right? It's a singular. Association with aging. I became fascinated with the brain and its interaction with the structures of the human body. Again, this is a run-on sentence, and eventually I naturally inclined, that doesn't make sense, towards the field of anatomy. Why is it capitalized? For my undergraduate studies. The good news here is that you started with some kind of a narrative and it's personal, and you ended up in the right place in terms of linking it to undergraduate studies, okay? The problems here are the ones that I mentioned, right? Is that the sentence structure is lacking. The clarity is also lacking, okay? So like I mentioned. Okay, so now this is great though, right? In terms of undergraduate studies, and now you begin the next sentence, the next paragraph with my undergraduate studies. Okay, great. So at least you're giving me flow. Flow is incredibly important. I want you to conceptualize this as water being poured down a set of stairs, right? And what I mean by that is that it's very fluid, it's very flowing, and it's literally going down a set of very clear logical steps. And that's what you're doing for me here, which is great. You're taking me through everything that led to you being interested in this, and then you focused on something in your undergraduate studies, and now you're going to tell me about it, right? That's like the next step down. Okay, so that's what I mean by that. Okay, next one. My undergraduate studies exposed me to the fundamental anatomical concept. No, not to the, just say to fundamental anatomical concepts through hands-on gross anatomy, cadaver. Do you mean to have a comma here? Cadaver dissections, molecular and neuro, just say molecular and, or I don't know, is molecular anatomy a thing? I'm sorry if I don't know that. But molecular and neuroanatomy topics is not, doesn't sound good. Okay, and this doesn't make sense to then have where after this. There needs to be like an and somewhere. Okay, where I was further, okay, so don't say where I was further intrigued. Again, the key thing to understand here, guys, is when it comes to people reading this, they don't really care if you were fascinated by something or intrigued by something or curious about something. These are not good words to be able to have. Again, when I say overly emotional, again, what I mean is overly subjective to the level of the individual. And it's especially not telling these individuals who would essentially, quote unquote, hire you, i.e. accept you as a student. You're not telling them what they get. You're basically explaining that you're curious about things and you think grad school would help that. And you're absolutely right that it would. But the thing is that this is a sales job. We got to sell you to the reader, okay? They don't have to sell the program to you, otherwise you wouldn't be applying for it otherwise, right? So, where I was further intrigued when I learned about neuroplasticity and the potential for the brain to repair itself through neural stem cells and how, okay, again, run-on sentence. We got to work on the English here, okay? Through neural stem cells and how this might serve as therapy for irreversible neuronal damages caused by conditions such as stroke and Alzheimer's disease. Way too much. That sentence is way too long and it has way too much in it. This is literally the first sentence here, meaning that this paragraph is massive in terms of, relatively speaking, in terms of the number of sentences that are in it, okay? So, and we say stroke and Alzheimer's disease. When I go up here, notice how you said Alzheimer's disease and dementia. So it seems a little bit odd that down here, now not only are you switching the order to stroke and Alzheimer's disease, but you're bringing up stroke in the first place, okay? So this is something that throws me off as the reader a little bit, okay? I realize the inherent opportunity for life-saving breakthroughs in this area, right? So here, in terms of, so the issue here is that we got a lot of stuff up here, right? So neuroplasticity, potential for the brain to repair itself through neural stem cells, how this could be possible for, right? So life-saving breakthroughs in this area, right? So the issue here is that in terms of inherent opportunity, right? I would just say opportunity, right? I realize the opportunity, but again, this is very high sensitivity, keep in mind. So my hope is after this, you'll give me some high specificity stuff. So here, as a result of my commitment to the field, I decided to pursue a career in medical research, which would allow me the unique opportunity of conducting bench-to-bedside research. Not really unique opportunity, right? A lot of people pursue this kind of stuff, so we can take that out. Of conducting bench-to-bedside research and translate. No, it's got to be parallel structure. Conducting, translating, basic research, basic science. Oh, no, not basic science research, just basic research into clinical applications. Something like that, right? Or applying basic research into clinical practice. Okay. Okay, so this is great, but it really doesn't tell me how. Right, it basically says your undergraduate studies exposed you to these things, but it doesn't really tell me anything about your undergraduate work, right? Were you on the dean's list at all? Did you stand out in any particular regard? Maybe you did some advanced coursework or something like this. Really what this says, like, let's put it this way, right? If you get somebody who's reading this who's really just a negative person, what's going to happen is they're going to read it and they're going to say, okay, so this person could have taken literally one class in something, cognitive neuroscientific, learned about neural stem cells, and then not read any articles ever outside of that one class, and then become interested in this as a field. Now I know, Victor, that this is not the case for Victor, but I am saying that if you get a really negative reader, they could make that assumption, okay? So let's keep going though, right? So this is talking about all undergraduate studies in general, but again, really what we're coming away with is I went to undergrad, I found out about neural stem cells and that this could help with individuals with these kinds of conditions, and therefore I really want to devote myself to it. What I would argue is that these first two paragraphs, there's a way to be able to combine them, right? In terms of, modifying both of them, tightening them up, and then it would just be one big old paragraph. So. Okay, next. Although my experiences in my undergraduate coursework have been rewarding. Okay, I don't understand. What experiences are we talking about here? Research has undoubtedly been the most significant and fulfilling part of my undergraduate education. Okay, this sentence doesn't really work, right? Instead, basically we need a sentence that when I say bridges, right, something like this, right, in terms of from the first paragraph, again, if we're going to take these two and we're going to combine them, the next paragraph should be something about like, we began you began the journey or whatever, right? As an aspiring clinical psychologist, like for me, I'm a clinical psychologist, right? As an aspiring clinical psychologist, I recognize the invaluable role that research plays in the development of like novel evidence-based clinical techniques. Hence, during my undergraduate studies, I endeavored to gain research experience, by serving as an assistant in 2 labs, period. In the first, next one, I learned and then all about the second, okay? So that would be the general structure, okay? So here we talk about research has been very fulfilling, which is great, but again, a lot of the language is, most significant, fulfilling. This is great, and don't get me wrong, I think it's fantastic, but again, the language is so subjective that it's not really doing anything for you. It's not really selling anything about you. So next, instilling myself, okay, that's not the right word. Instilling myself into the world of scientific research, that doesn't make sense, okay? I have developed an investigative mindset, a passion for the scientific process, always Oxford commas, and appreciation for the result. Okay, this is a wasted sentence. This is not saying literally anything. All this is saying is, I like research, and you literally just said that in the first paragraph. None of these things is selling you. None of these things is helping you. Okay, take it out. Next, I have been able to supplement my undergraduate coursework with research, which has allowed me the opportunity to reinforce my understanding of the concepts taught in my undergraduate courses, which dramatically improve my academic performance. Okay, that doesn't make sense. Again, you're not saying anything here. All you're saying is that I did research during my undergraduate studies. That's all you're saying, right? I've been able to supplement my undergraduate coursework with research. That's literally all that's saying, which has allowed me the opportunity to reinforce my understanding of concepts. Again, doesn't mean anything. Taught in my undergraduate courses, again, redundant, which dramatically, don't use that word, improved my academic performance. That doesn't make sense, right? It improved your academic performance. Does that mean that doing research increased your GPA? And if so, that should have been discussed earlier, and I don't understand how that would have been the case. Okay, I understand that research can supplement undergraduate studies, and I think that's great. But again, now at the very beginning, we had some really clear structure. Now the structure has broken down. Okay, here we go. In the final year of my undergraduate studies, I conducted a research project. This sentence is too elementary, particularly the second clause. I conducted a research project. You need more meat there. Okay, was it a capstone project? Was it an undergraduate honors thesis? What kind of a lab was it in? Who did you do it with? Under whose supervision, and so forth, right? It's just too narrow right now. This exposed me to laboratory and practical bench work. Okay, again, this here could be part of the first sentence. I had the opportunity to explore the field of clinical anatomy research for the first time. No, this is a wasted sentence. Okay, I conducted a research project in the field of clinical anatomy, which exposed me to laboratory and practical bench work. Okay, there you go. That's all 3 sentences in one sentence, right? It being this choppy, again, previously the sentences were all run-ons. Now all of a sudden we're getting super choppy, so this is breaking up my cognitive flow, which isn't great, okay? It was my first experience working in a professional research. Don't say that either, because you're starting with my final year, but it was my first setting, which if you get a reader who's a jerk, they're going to say, okay, again, this is somebody who is inexperienced. Next, I learned how to conduct a literature search, how to design a study, and how to write for scientific journals. Okay, this is a problem, okay? Conducting a literature search, fine. You make sure that you say a systematic literature search if that's the case. How to design a study, I've said this in other videos where I do these reviews, okay? It's designing a study, guys. There's so many hundreds of ways to design studies. Just make it specific. How to design a case control study, how to design a randomized control study, how to design a retrospective file review study, whatever it is, right? Just be specific. How to write for scientific journals is not good, right? Why? Because unless you have a plethora of publications, how to write for scientific journals is something that people who've been in the game for 20, 30 years still work at all the time. If for an undergraduate to be able to master it is basically impossible, right? Grad school, you will learn how to do it at a very elementary level, and then you will build your skill over time. You may you may be writing, right, with the intent to be able to publish, but writing for the intent to publish and publishing are two entirely different things, right? I would take that out because, again, for a reader who's a jerk, what's going to happen is they're going to read that and say this person thinks that they're better than they are, okay? Next, under the guidance of my supervisor, comma, Professor Joshua, comma, we, don't say we, right? Because again, you've been saying I, who is we? Use juvenile male Wistar rats to investigate the structural and functional changes attributable to the combined use of caffeine, nicotine, comma, and MDMA on the prefrontal cortex. Okay, well, take this out or whatever, because folks who are reading this presumably know what's going on in the prefrontal cortex, right? They, what is they? Right? The rats were divided into 4 groups and given time to acclimate, I think is what you mean. Then we, administered these substances, all of them simultaneously, different groups of them individually, I don't know, for 30 days in a controlled environment. What does that mean? Neurobehavioral tests such as Barnes maze, that doesn't make any sense. Is it Barnes's maze? Or are we missing an apostrophe? Is it Barnes mazes? I don't know. To access spatial learning and memory, well, no, you're not accessing it, right? You're measuring it, presumably. And elevated plus maze, this doesn't make any sense. Okay, were carried out to assess the anti-anxiety effects of these pharmacological agents. Okay, comma after which they meaning what? Pharmacological agents, because that's where it is in the sentence, but I know that that's not what you mean, were euthanized in histochemistry procedures. I don't understand. Were what? Okay, were conducted. Yeah, the noun is way too far away from the verb, which is down here, okay? As well as the routine H&E procedure. Okay, what is H&E? Which is GFAP, okay? As is the GFAP, were conducted on the prefrontal cortex, which was the organ of our interest. I know, but you already said that, so I don't understand why we're saying it again here. We discovered that you didn't really discover anything, you found, right? We found that the co-administration of these substances, meaning all of them together, cause neuronal distortion and localized demyelinization, as well as the expression of Nissl bodies. Okay, so this reads basically, if I start here, this is literally the abstract of an article or the abstract of an honors thesis, right? But it doesn't really do anything for me. I'm reading it, it's good to know that you did some stuff, right? But you say how to write for scientific journals. The only thing I really want to know here, if I see something like this, is did you publish it? Because if you said that you learned how to write for scientific articles, or sorry, how to write for scientific journals, I expect this to be published. I don't know if it was or not, right? But that's my expectation. So this research project allowed me to master essential research techniques. So we never want to use a word like master, right? Master literally means every possible permutation and combination of these research techniques. You know everything about them. I've been in the game for almost 20 years, and some of the stats that, I have even assisted in further developing, I still don't believe that I have mastery over them in every way, shape, and form. So again, always think about how this is going to come across to readers who are potential supervisors, and they may read something like that as being arrogant, so I would take it out. Allowed me to practice essential research techniques, gain experience in essential research techniques, right? So including, we can remove the comma before the word including here, right? Including Western blotting, histology, add the comma here, we need the Oxford comma, and histochemical techniques. Okay, so this is a little confusing in terms of the sentence construction because it's including A, B, and C, such as, but the such as presumably is only referring to these techniques, right? But it's something where, in terms of these two other terms being in there, it's a little confusing, right? Such as tissue staining and tissue preservation. Having time to learn these techniques while being closely mentored in the lab provided a valuable opportunity to increase my efficiency in the lab. So no in the lab, right? and also gain confidence in my work at the lab bench. Okay, so that doesn't really make sense. So I would just delete this entire piece for sure, okay? Closely mentored in the lab by who, right? In terms of, were they the PI or, talk a little bit, you can just put some terminology in there would be helpful. Taking additional time. Okay, so again, having time and then taking additional time, not great, so don't say that. So taking additional time to gain a detailed understanding of the scientific background, purpose, and significance of the skills I acquired also helped immensely in my related scientific coursework. Okay, so the problem is that now we're on to research, which is great. So when you're talking about research, don't go back and forth between research and then coursework, right? Deal with everything having to do with your academic background first, then go on to research, okay? So don't be going back and forth between them, right? So especially here in the middle of the paragraph, right? As I found myself with the stronger understanding. Okay, so stronger understanding, detailed understanding. You're using the same or very similar terms too often, okay? Stronger understanding of the topics presented in class due to my experience, due to my experience practicing these related techniques in lab. Just delete the entire sentence. Oh, never use a word like cherished. This is very emotional language. It's inappropriate for academic writing. This unique experience. Okay, so I'm not sure if it was a unique experience, working in a lab, getting mentored, and gaining skill sets like histology and these things. I don't think that's a unique experience for individuals in your field. I would change that, right? I appreciated this experience, right? Because it allowed me to operate outside of my comfort zone. Okay, well, don't say that, right? Because this suggests that you're not comfortable being in a lab, right? And that's, of course, what graduate school is going to be in your field, okay? High level of precision and attention to detail, well, it would be high levels of precision and attention to detail, just detail, not details, were needed for success, for my project's success, comma, which I was able to achieve. Okay, this sentence also, just delete this. This doesn't really help anything. So at this stage in this paragraph, there's no structure to this paragraph. I just feel like there's stuff getting thrown in here, right? There's no structure to it. It's not taking me through a story. It's just telling me things, and not in a way that's actually achieving anything for me as the reader in terms of persuading me of anything. I also had to learn how to interact and work well with various members of the, well, not with various members, just with members of the research group, right? And articulate my ideas in a logical and scientific manner. I guess. Period, not semicolon isn't necessary. Capital T, this. This helped hone my communication. Okay, this is redundant, delete it. This was my first experience in the lab, in a lab or in the lab? Comma, and my research project gave me the opportunity to put my theoretical knowledge into practice. Again, it's just not really telling me that, it's not influencing me in any way when I read this paragraph. Again, at the very beginning or whatever, there was I think that this was useful up here, okay? And this to an extent was useful, but the remainder, I'm just not getting anything out of it. This was my first experience in the lab research. It was such a rewarding experience. I don't understand. It should be, it was such a rewarding experience that, not it was such a rewarding experience as I have, no. I was fascinated, no. Emotional language, take it out. By the idea of research, no, this is not. Again, it's not making you stand out in any way, right? So being able to conduct, write, comma, and go through the publication process. Okay, but you haven't talked about publications yet. I don't have anything about publishing anything. You told me about a research project earlier, but now I gotta go toggle back and forth between this and your CV. What role did you play in the publication? You say write, which is great. What did you write? Were you a solo author of something? If it was part of the team, again, just what role did you take in that process? Further deepened my interest and gave me the drive and perseverance to pursue my goals in clinical. Again, it's not telling me anything, right? This paragraph needs to either be completely deleted or keep the first piece and then go into it more deeply. 6 months after my graduation, I had the privilege to work at the NIMR as a trainee research officer in the monitoring and evaluation unit. Usually some pieces of this would end up being capitalized, for example, capital M, capital E, capital U. As a research officer, I worked with a team devoted to evaluating different research methodologies. So this is not parallel structure, evaluating, and it should be another thing here, and carrying out right? Or is it evaluating different research methodologies and evaluating how the various research protocols were carried out? First of all, never end a sentence in a preposition, okay? It was a great experience. Again, great experience. It's just, this is not academic writing. This is not graduate level writing. This is like undergraduate application writing, personal statement writing. It was a great experience because I had the opportunity to learn and use some of the various methods used in healthcare research. No. Additionally, you didn't learn to anything, I learned data collection methods, such as digital questionnaire design using web application tools such as RedCap, as well as diverse paper-based questionnaires used in various surveys. Don't use something like diverse, used in various surveys. It's way too high sensitivity, right? Especially when you just use something high specificity, like mentioning something like RedCap. This exposed me to an aspect of research, which involves accurate exposure, if that doesn't make sense, and outcome measurements by asking appropriate questions. As an inaccurate measure biases the measure. Measure, delete this sentence. It just doesn't make sense. In my time at NIMR, I was responsible for collecting, analyzing, and interpreting data from the research field that doesn't make sense using data analysis tools. I don't understand what data analysis tools is. Most of my responsibilities in the department involved using statistical packages such as Oxford Comma and Microsoft Excel to interpret data or actually analyze data retrieved from the field, which means what? To measure the prevalence of tropical diseases such as Baba and malaria in the northern and western regions of Nigeria. Okay? This work was focused in scope, according to who? And confined to the computer screen. No, not this. But the ability to see my work as part of a larger picture, no. And the gratification of small victories, absolutely not. Delete this sentence. Rewarding for me. And then lowercase I, this is a lack of attention to detail. Was part of a large group of researchers who were dedicated to improving the quality of life and healthcare in the community. Again, here you say healthcare is 2 words. Earlier you used healthcare as 1 word. It's just lack of attention to detail. This paragraph is really not telling me a whole lot. I did appreciate, though, these 2 sentences. So these you can work with. The rest of it deleted. And also, realize the power of collaborate. No, because earlier you already talked about working in as member of a team. And then again, healthcare here being 2 words. No. Through my experience in academic research. Again, this suggests that you have a ton of it. And again, the people who are reading this, especially if it's at a good university, are going to have an absurd amount more experience. So reading this again could come across poorly. I've been inspired, no, and motivated to pursue a career in research. Okay, too much research, but I have learned, not a word in this context, that much of the daily grind, absolutely not, in the lab is not transformative. Okay, I understand what you're saying, but I don't understand why you're saying it. Fortunately, I've developed the ability to keep in mind the broader context of what a daily task aims to achieve. I don't understand why either of these are in here. I'm excited to dive further. This is not academic writing, reworded, into research as a master's candidate and use my platform. What do you mean your platform? To be actively involved in teaching, researching. Okay, researching should be first. And mentoring, okay, well, this may not be seen as appropriate depending on the program you're applying for. The idea that you're mentoring somebody as a junior graduate student may be seen as arrogant. Bridging the gap between medical research and clinical application. Again, as somebody who's just graduating undergrad, I'm just not sure if this is necessarily something that I would end up saying. I plan to enroll in the department, especially as a master's student, I plan to enroll in the department's anatomical sciences track. Okay, what department? You've never mentioned any of this before, right? Essentially, what I would say here is that you should delete this entire thing and just begin a new paragraph that is talking about goodness of fit with the program as well as with the target supervisor, okay? I plan to enroll in the department's anatomical sciences track and to have the opportunity to work with. No, you don't plan to have the opportunity, right? You hope to have the opportunity to work with faculty members, no comma, such as Professor Kakove, remove the comma, whose lab I hope to be a part of. No, don't end clauses and prepositional phrases. Specifically working on okay, this sentence needs to be reworded. This is also a huge run-on sentence, and also it's a very long sentence, and the grammar is poor. You need to rewrite it. Studying at the University of Texas Health Science Center at San Antonio under the Cell Systems and Anatomy faculty. Are these different things? Because here, anatomical sciences track, here it's Cell Systems and Anatomy. I'm not understanding. Will be the transformational experience. No, never say something like transformational. And this is will be, not necessarily. The transformational experience. And also, they're going to say you should have already transformed, and now this should be it. For what would be a fulfilling career in academia as a research faculty member. I believe this program will help me achieve my goals of focusing on cutting it. Nope, delete, unnecessary. Overall, I consider this program to be the ideal graduate program for me because of its comprehensive and broad education of the anatomical sciences in its curriculum and the interdisciplinary research conducted by its faculty, which I envision myself doing. Nope. Redundancies. The problem is you are using too many words to say simple things, right? And so like these, for example, always go through every sentence and think about the parsimony principle. How can you say the most using the least number of words, okay? Finally, after attaining my master's degree, my plan is to enroll in an MD, PhD program, which would, okay, in what? So MD, I get it, but what? PhD in what? Which would further enable me to combine both clinical research and medical training to best help patients through translational research. That does make sense. Therefore, it would be a privilege to be given the opportunity, again, privilege to be given the opportunity, right? No. To pursue my goals at your institution. I sincerely hope I'm considered for this program. This does not make any sense. Guys, don't include single clause sentences where it's not really saying anything. Okay, delete. I would look forward to joining the no. Again, these adjectives and adverbs are where we get in trouble, guys, okay? Because they're highly emotional. Delete. Group at the university and making valuable research. That doesn't make any sense. Conducting valuable research. Also, who says it's valuable? Just conducting research. For the betterment of my country and the world at large. Thank you for your time and kind consideration. Okay, that last sentence, we can let it fly as a sole clause one, right? But those are few and far between. Okay, guys, thank you so much for watching. That is my review of this personal statement. Huge respect and gratitude for the individual who sent it to me. I know, guys, for these ones, I'm super rough and harsh in terms of how blunt I am with the language that I use in these videos, particularly when it comes to the personal statements. Please understand that the reason that I'm doing it is as a teaching exercise and how it is that people like myself who routinely are reading these sorts of things, this is how we read these. So if we begin reading it, if we see, like for example, I know that it may not seem like a big deal to a lot of you, but I see a lowercase I and I'm just like, did this person read it after they wrote it? And the reason why is that I have to read it. Right? So if I have to read it, I expect the person who wrote it to have enough appreciation for my time to make sure that everything is as perfect as possible, right? Is that a realistic expectation? I would think so, in terms of reading it enough times to catch all the tiny things and grammatical errors and run-on sentences and these things, even if that means that the person has to hire a copy editor or hire somebody like myself to be able to go through it, like as a consultant, before the stuff ends up getting submitted. But remember that what I'm trying to do in these reviews is to be able to give you some insight into the mind of a reader who does this often, okay? Because remember, rates of acceptance, especially the leading programs, they're really low. And because of that, you need to be on your game. And that's what the goal of these videos in this brief series that I'm trying to do for you, reviewing these things, is designed to do. Okay, guys, thank you so much, like I said, for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Thank you so much for stopping by, everyone. It's a pleasure to have you here as always. If you enjoyed this video and you'd like to see more in this series on navigating academia, please click on one of these links over here to be able to view more original content. I hope to see you there.